how to deal both with the growing options of the organization and obviously the growing risks. Guy Mizrahi is the chairman, as you know already, and we have 6 additional guests, so let's find out who you are. Itay, introduce yourself, your company. Dell Technologies, I think I've heard about it.
Small company. So nice to meet you all. My name is Itay Mesholam. I'm the field CTO of EMEA services.
All right. Moshe.
Thank you for having me here. I'm Moshe Aharon, about 10 years in security. The security architect for Ness Technologies.
Ness Technologies. Yoram.
Hi, Yoram, Rayzone Group, Chief Cyber Officer.
Say it again, loudly.
Yoram, Rayzone Group, Chief Cyber Officer.
Great. Tzach.
Hello, Tzach Horowitz, CISO at Vishay Precision Group. We are a global manufacturer for the defense, aerospace, automotive, and oil and gas industry.
Vishay. Noam.
Thank you, Thank you, Guy. My name is Noam. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of ELTA Cyber Division in II. Great to be here.
ELTA. And Ofer Binun.
Hi, Ofer Benun, founder and CEO of Talon Cybersecurity, which is a startup for the world of distributed and hybrid workforce based on browser security.
Great, thank you very much. Guy Mizrahi, the chairman of this panel. Guy, big organizations, big problems.
I think that there are big problems for everyone. Big organizations have the money to address those problems and have all kind of regulations and motivation to solve those problems. They don't always succeed, but they do have the opportunity to do it. Small companies, there are a lot of problems that they cannot address. And I think that we've already discussed on how many problems, how many cyber attacks happen every day, every hour. So basically problem for everyone.
Right. Let me pose the underlying questions to all of you. What would be, again, we said big organizations, there are a lot of facets. What would be the weakest link, according to your experience and work? Let's start with you, Itay, in big organizations.
So what we are seeing in the market today, that it's not a question of if cyber attack will happen, it's a question of when. And each organization needs to prepare for it. When we are looking on organizations that build their cyber strategy, they need to build the real programs for the future. When we are seeing organization that was preparing in the past to protect their internal data center, today they need to protect their environment in the public cloud, in the edge, and the data centers. And of course, with the COVID-19, it come to us, all the work from home. And each organization needs to build their program. When they build the strategy, they need to work and understand first about how to back up their environment and put them involved in a secure way. When we are looking on the culture in the organization, build a real cyber culture within the organizations. We need always to maintain and do a testing in the organization to be prepared for any cyber attack. And each organization need to understand if they are suffering any cyber attack, how they are going to recover from this cyber attack. So build the strategy, build the program, and understand and build the culture within the organization.
Right. Moshe?
Well, based on what we see on our customer base and our corporate security itself, I can say that the weakest link is what we expose outside. We can't avoid from exposing assets, right? It's part of what we do, especially in the recent developments with COVID-19, and that forced even the toughest and hardest organizations to open to the world. Well, to my view, there are 3 kinds of assets out there. The ones you know and manage as part of your security program. The assets you know, and for some reason, for manpower reasons, for knowledge reasons, you don't manage. And there is the shadow IT that we always talk about. The assets you don't know and obviously don't manage. And such as, let's say that someone is preparing a very fast marketing campaign and wants to go fast with it, and not necessarily goes through information security. That's shadow IT, in my view. And when you talk about, for example, the assets you know but you don't manage, the easiest example will be workers that work in remotely. You know, they're sitting with their laptops in their homes and not necessarily controlled and defended. These are the issues from my point of view.
All right, we'll talk about remote work in length later. I'm going to toss it to Yoram. What's your main concern according to your experience?
It's a different question. The main concern, or what is the weakest link?
Take two answers.
You're too generous. So the weakest link, I've been doing security for the last 24 years. The answer to that hasn't changed. The weakest link is always the human, okay? Technology evolves. You can do better EDR. You can do better intelligence collection. At the end of the day, there's a human behind it, and they would always connect the wrong machine at the wrong place. They would push the link when they shouldn't push the link or click the link. So the weakest link would always be the human. We can't configure them or us any better, okay? So they are, I'd say, a big part of my concerns, okay? The other concerns would actually be with relationship between organizations, so between unit in an organization. When you run security, you have something in mind. But there are other groups. You don't operate in a vacuum. There's engineering, there's IT, there's finance. And what makes the chain stronger is the relationship between those organizations and how responsible they are. Again, we can place the technology, okay? That doesn't stop there. It only starts there. And it has to be pretty good configured as well.
All right. Tzach.
Thank you. So as VPG is a manufacturing company, and before cybersecurity came in, before we had the huge attacks of the last several years, the motto was make it work with minimal budget. So the company grew with M&As, with a lot of legacy, even with known vulnerabilities, known external partners coming in. So the key challenges were, on top of the human element, is all the legacy and all the external access, which is not dissimilar from hospitals, where you have hundreds of external vendors in your supply chain that have different types of access. In addition to that, when I joined in at the end of 2019 and COVID started, we had to transform the company from an on-premises only company to a company that functions in a hybrid mode. Because you have to manufacture, you have to be on site. But the people that can and have to work work from home. And you have to provide different capabilities while working with a very adverse culture where people don't want to install protection on their mobile phones or their laptops. You know, it's not nice, and we will spy on them, and so on and so on.
Right. We'll elaborate on this. Noam, give us your overview.
Well, thank you. I have to say something. Based on our, we have a large number of international projects as II, and you started this session joking with Guy about the connection between the size of the organizations and the level of the threat. And I tend to agree with it. I think this is the key. Things becoming much more complex. The number of manpower, of people working in the organization, and I totally agree, of course, with Yoram. And the complexity, and we can see it, for example, as the cloud. We tend to look, or the customers tend to look for magics. Please give us better systems, remote systems, as were mentioned here. And I think that the attack surface got huge. And the bad guys are much more dynamic than the good guys, or sometimes they're much more dynamic, tend to use it. And our solutions, or the traditional solutions, are failing. It's like, I don't know, like brick walls against gunpowder. And people tend, because what Tzach just said, tend to look for the traditional solutions, the cheapest solutions, and it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And it's much more than the, let's call it operational systems that we all can offer the best of breed. But we need the culture. We have problem with the culture. We have problem with the solutions. We have problem with the tendency to invest money. And just as an example, how many of us are offering proactive systems? Can we still rely on passive systems? And of course, we have the solutions for it, but not all of the customers can get them.
Okay, and last on this round, Ofer?
So following up on some of, I think almost all of you touched the topic of how the perimeter of the organization is evolving pretty much outside of the organization's original perimeter with the distributed and hybrid workforce. And the reason why we've founded Talon is understanding that it's pretty much here to stay. So the fact that companies will be more and more distributed over the next decade. The fact that if in the past our main focus was the things which were exposed to the other world, to the outside world, now pretty much sometimes thousands or hundreds of thousands of machines are actually connecting to the organization and in parallel exposed to the outside world. And we think that the only way pretty much to cope with this new reality is with a new type of security solutions, because the old solutions in many cases were just not adapted to that. And you have touched the fact that, for example, employees are not so happy to install security solutions on their personal devices. We weren't as well interested to do it in the past, and we think that there should be some type of solution that people will be happy to install, and from the other side will give the comfort for the organization for this new type of no premise or anymore.
Okay, so what I'm picking here is a lot of talk about the human factor. I mean, obviously big organizations, many people, the human factor. So maybe, Itay, you should be more in the business of education and psychology before cybersecurity?
A little bit, but if I'm providing my view about it with the organization that we are working with, so we are trying to build a real culture. Think about soccer team. As my friend Yoram mentioned, there is many departments within the organizations. We have the IT, we have the finance, we have business needs, we have the security teams, and we need to build one big picture within the organization, how to work with the security teams, how to build and connect between all the dots. If it is the IT needs, if it is the business needs, if it is the security needs, and build one picture within the organization and build one culture to be a success team in the organization. So if organization is really willing to work and build a real structure for the security programs, they need to have the human who will be able to handle it, will be able to work in a real security environment.
Okay, how do you do that, Moshe? How do you get the people to do this? This is not cybersecurity questions. I'm in psychology now.
Well, I think it's a matter of, as you said, education. Cyber is not, is not a secret, it's not a magic, it's just a way to do things, right? So if you go to your employees and educate them and explain to them what's the risks and do a correct security program with them, trust them, empower them, I think that's step one. You can put the controls around it and it's okay, but if the people doesn't know what's a risk and what's not, what's the point?
But as Tzach said, it's hard to change habits, to make them proactive, right? So what do you do?
So multiple things. First of all, we provide them with the required knowledge and understanding of why we are doing things. We are not just blocking activities because we want to block them. It's because we want to protect the company. And then part of our awareness program is providing their guidance on how to behave at home during shopping season. If you have spam from Israel Post that happened here a couple of months ago, and other things. So we enrich them not only in how to behave at work, but also help them with their private lives. And of course, if everything else fails, disciplinary measures.
I want to jump in for a second. I want to show a different approach because a lot of years ago when we talked about cybersecurity, it was called information security, no cyber yet. We basically fought for the opportunity to make people do less using their computers, they had least privileges, they couldn't do anything that they wanted. They could do what we wanted them to do. I think that education is very important, but it's not the solution for cyber problems. Education is very important because you need to be aware, but we as a chief information security officer should not be transferring the responsibility to the user that is not specialized in cybersecurity, but specialized in what he does. So I think that education is very important, but it's not the solution for cybersecurity. You need to go back to the reality. You need to limit the things that employees can do, limit the problems that they can cause, limit what they do, because if you want, you just need to rely on, let's teach you what you shouldn't do. And this is not cybersecurity. This is, hope.
May I jump in?
Sure.
I couldn't agree more, okay? I think it's a bad strategy to rely on awareness. It's proven to be a bad strategy, okay? As I stated earlier, the weakest link...
You don't trust people so much, huh?
I do, but I do trust them to do what they know. I don't trust them to do what they don't and what they're not trained to do, okay? For that, I specialize the security team, okay? I trust the people that specialize in that. As I mentioned earlier, the weakest link is the human, okay? So we should have the right technology in place, enforcing the restrictions that, or enabling what we are willing to enable, okay? Or moving to technologies that, in a way, limit the harm that an individual can do. So if you work in a pure cloud environment using services, okay, the amount of damage that can be done by a user is limited, okay? There are a lot of technologies to integrate and minimize the fault possible.
If I may, first of all, although I tend to agree with my colleagues here, today we are speaking, or in the last few years, about cyber resilience, and awareness is a building block. I'm not sure a major building block, but a very important one. I'm sure that no one here meant to neglect it, to put it aside. This is a major thing, and we need to invest. The organization need to invest. The national level need to invest. This is a major part. But again, I tend to agree. We can't rely only on awareness. We need to have, let's call it, a different, more advanced operational capabilities that can block some of the users, that can monitor the system in way better way. Otherwise, we can't do it. Otherwise, we're going to fail, like some of us or some of our customers tend to fail. We have to remember another thing. There is a built-in tension between the cybersecurity and business or operational continuity. And we need to find this golden point, this magic point in time, how to balance between them. It's very easy to limit everything, but then we're not going to work, and our employees are going to lose the trust on us. So we need to balance it. We need to limit the damage. We need, I think it was Itay that said the attack is going to happen. It's obvious. We need to be prepared to it. And now we have to find the way how to balance between all of these different vectors, different powers. Otherwise, we're going to fail. We're going to limit ourselves, we're going to neglect, we're going to spend too much money on rubbish.
But we should expect some discipline from workers, right, Ofer? That should be part of the requirement.
For me, opening statement of Guy is really the mantra here. Organizations that will, let's say, be dependent on the awareness of the employees and even, let's say, their discipline, or I would even add the loyalty of the employees are in a big problem because, you know, there is one thing to make sure and to think, okay, I want the employees to be aware, but we also need to cope with a situation where one of the employees do not want in the favor of the organization. So if we are already building the organization and the security and the architecture, even to handle with the situation that one of our employees actually wants to harm the organization, then certainly we cannot count on awareness, right? So it's actually the other way around. So I think employee awareness, employees as sensors is fantastic.
It's nice to have.
It's
but
a bonus.
You
it's
security people,
exactly.
I cannot get you to trust the employees
exactly.
or any people for that matter.
It's a fantastic bonus. We want them to be aware. We want them as sensors. But in my opinion, there are three core kind of things that we have to do. A is limiting the blast radius, which is pretty much the concept or the basic concept of zero trust, right? To make sure that everyone has only the privilege that they need to do for what they need to do. Secondly, would be to have the right controls and monitoring on all pretty much access to the core and to the sensitive resources of the organization. So when someone touches something that is sensitive, I want to know that, I want to make sure that it's done like I was hoping. And number three would be to make sure that even if something happens, I have an extremely quick ability to understand what happened, to look into the data, and the ability to analyze it in order to have a very quick remediation. If we have all three in place, usually we're in a good situation.
I want to add one more thing. As a security professional, I would say that I cannot trust the human. I cannot trust most of the things that he does, that the user does. So this is not something that I want to rely on. I cannot trust on a lot of things on the endpoint side. So basically, you know, I don't know what you do in your phone and you have your emails there. I don't know what you do in your computer and you have important things there. So the only thing that I can protect is the data itself and how you can approach, how you can touch this data. And those are the things that we can monitor, we can protect, and we can, you know, rely on that they are sure, that they are okay.
Yeah, well, I will say this is in a perfect world. When you're only in IT and you have high-tech people.
This is a perfect world, sir.
Exactly. But when you have a distributed legacy, heterogeneous environment, and you don't have access, and it takes time, efforts, and of course budgets and other resources to get there, to bridge the gap, you need the people. I have environments which are disconnected from the world because they are manufacturing shop floors that I will not connect to the IT environment in order to monitor. And that is why we need, and just, I cannot stop manufacturing. So part of it is technological and part of it is making sure the people will help me do that.
I would say that it's a budget problem. So if you had a lot of machines that would do those people work, it wasn't a problem. I do not, you know, I would not like to put my resources and my best protection on the user side, because simply I cannot trust them. There can be a rogue employee. There could be something that there can be someone that you know is not smart enough, and so on and so on. So basically, you know, awareness is important. People are important, but they are not a security mechanism.
Okay. I really want to share a quick story with the audience that for me kind of was the aha moment that if we count too much on the human factor, then we're in a problem. It was about 4 months ago when one of my friends' operational environment, so all of the cloud environment fell down in the middle of the night. It was about 2 a.m. All of the company obviously came into a crisis mode, looking why did the environment crashed in the middle of the night. So they were able to bring it up at about 3:30. In the morning, they found that it came from one of the DevOps engineers user that pretty much shut down all of the AWS environment. And they spoke with him, I think it was 9, 10 a.m. Hey, what happened at 2 a.m.? He said, look, I was asleep. It's nothing about me. I didn't do anything. And what they found is that his kid was playing on that endpoint. He played Fortnite. Something, probably he clicked something there that shut down all of the operational environment of that company. So when you count on the human factor, when you don't have the right mechanisms in place, that's things which are happening.
So one security control is don't put a good display card on your PC.
Yes,
Guy,
that would have helped.
Guy, if I may, it's okay. Is it practical to limit so much the manpower? In some of the organizations, maybe we can do it, in security organizations and others. But in our organization, I'm not sure we can really limit them to the level that they can't create any damage.
You know, Noam, I remember a story, you know, way back that I was yeah, I'm too old. When I was, I was talking with a friend of mine, which was a CISO for an airline company. And I told him, listen, I went over the computers on your network, and some of it had all kind of game inside of them. You know, the solitaire and the cards, the game in the Windows XP were installed. And I asked him, listen, you know, everything that there is and you don't use, you need to take out of it. And basically what he told me is that if they will take out the Minesweeper and the Solitaire, there will be a huge strike because the employees there are very connected and they won't agree that something like this will happen. So you're talking as IAI, I don't think that you can do it. Sorry, but when you left me for basically to hit it. But I think that an organization need to be strong enough to consider what are the needs of the organization itself and not the needs of the employee. Yes, I would block Facebooks. Yes, I would block a lot of other websites. And if the employee wants, let him have it on his phone and limit the access to the resources on the phone itself.
Well, I tend to agree with you, except the joke about IAI. But when I'm looking at the last, I don't know, major attacks, cyber major attacks in the last, 18 months since the COVID started, I think that we can find even in companies that work according to your doctrine, we can find again that the bad guys had a huge success in penetrating these their networks, these organizations, and etc. So I think it's very good to limit what we can limit. I'm sure that we need to rely on better technology, much more. I call it always proactive. I'm not talking about active, but proactive capabilities, a better monitoring systems. But still, we can't push yet. We can't push the manpower, the human resource, the human factor outside. We are still rely on it. In some of our customers, wonderful countries, some of them tier 1, still the place of the human factor is critical, is a major place, and we can't push them away. So we need, again, to balance between all of the things, to limit what we can, to fix what we can, to have a better capabilities, and to educate in a better way our customers.
I think that you shouldn't push people away, but you shouldn't trust them. So this is those two different things. You can give them access to what they need in order to work, but you shouldn't give them access to what they don't need. If I have a full access to every file on this on the company network, then when I click a malware that encrypts all the files, everything will be encrypted. If you limit my connection just to the things that I need, it will be a much lower problem, a much smaller problem.
Yeah, but that's, again, in a perfect world, when you're talking about all or nothing, black and
We
white.
talked about it. It's a
Because
perfect world.
when you have a diverse community of employees, some of them need Facebook for work, some of them needs flashcards in order to transfer programs or get test results from customers. Some of them have to go on the internet in order to investigate because they are marketing or sales. Some of them are customer services, and some of them have to download updates to the manufacturing machines. And this is a huge risk. And when something doesn't work, you need external parties to come and work with you, and you have to secure this access, but the access will exist.
I agree. There are, you cannot do anything 100%. But if 99% of the company will follow the strict rules and you just limit the exposure to this 1%, you're safer. You won't be having 100% security, but you will be safer.
Yoram.
I tend to agree with Guy. It's a matter of budget, even when it comes to you. There is technology to counter pretty much everything you said, okay? The access should be limited. We're talking about zero trust for the last 4 years. You should have granular access to what you need, what you don't need access. You shouldn't have access. You need to maintain situational awareness at all time. Who is doing what and when. Now, you may be unfortunate in the sense that you're running the security in an organization that has legacy systems and is making a business decision not to make a huge investment, which is a legit investment, or maybe not you, someone else.
Not
okay?
everything is budget. Not everything is budget. If I have to rewire an entire building because it is not secure in order to provide the security measures, and I have to shut down production for a week.
That's budget.
That's not budget. Some machines you cannot shut down and tell them to come up again tomorrow. This is not an easy thing.
Again, it's a business decision. It's a business that you
business.
can't do that. You would
Business, not
incur
budget.
a loss. You would incur a loss, but you can still do it. It's a
You've listened
decision.
to a very vivid argument. We are on to something. This is definitely something organizations are dealing with. I'll sum it up by saying it's nice to have cooperation of employees and organizational members. Nice to have, but don't trust them. That's the bottom line. On the other hand, Itay, organizations love the cloud. Okay, they don't like the humans, but they love the cloud. Take all my assets, take all my information, put it in the clouds. What about that?
So I think it combined with the last statements that Guy mentioned. So if you are looking on the limit of the access of employees to any websites or something like that, it's part of the programs. Because when we are discussing about cloud computing, we are discussing about edge computing, if it is for manufacturing, if it is the 5G that comes to us, if it is any technology that we need to manage, the work from home, everything is something that we need to protect in our organization. And the website is part of that. But what about all the smart systems that you have? If it is the IoT, if it is autonomous vehicles. So for that, we are looking on the digital transformation as a real enabler for our cybersecurity. Why? Because how we are limiting the access with the new technologies, with autonomous IT, with infrastructure as code, with all the stuff that will limit the access of employees for the technologies. We will have the autonomous testing, we will have compliance, we will have auditing, reporting for everything. If it is the cloud computing, we are looking on the public cloud. We are seeing many organizations that shifting with cloud-first approach their applications into the public cloud, and they realize that this is not fit for their applications. So each organization need to understand first about the application portfolio that you have. They need to assess and understand which application will fit to which cloud, if it will be on the private cloud, if it will be on the public cloud. They need to understand their business resiliency programs. They need to understand if it fit for each cloud, if it will be AWS, if it will be GCP, Azure, each one of them, they need to understand first their core understanding of their application, and then connect it with their programs for cybersecurity, for business resiliency, and understand how to protect it correctly.
Guy, the rush to cloud, is it risky for organizations?
It depends on the organization and on the data, but I think that the cloud is not, it's not really a security consideration. One problem is that you shift the responsibility to the cloud provider. So now I don't maintain my own mail server, someone else maintains this server, maybe he's better than me, so I shift the responsibility and the technology to another location, but I can still implement the security mechanisms that I want. I can enable two-factor authentication, I can enable all kind of rules and monitoring. So I would not consider cloud as a security consideration. I would consider it as a technology decision that you need to make, and one consideration is the cybersecurity aspect.
Moshe?
Well, cloud, as my understanding, is an environment, as every other environment.
Is it a secure environment?
It's an environment like every organization. Can you say about your internal environment that it's a security environment? No, it's an environment. People live in it, people work in it. You have an application in it, you have a business processes in it.
You have employees that you don't know of?
Well, everywhere, basically. You can have an employee, you can have an employee inside the company or outside the company. And when you start transforming to the cloud, you do need to plan it correctly and use the mechanisms the cloud providing you in order to compensate for what you can't do inside your organization. For example, about what I said before about employee working from home. This is one of our considerations of what we do with cloud transformation in Ness Technologies. We on a course of moving everything to be cloud native. Like every endpoint will have a connection to the cloud. For a marketplace, for employees to download their software for the marketplace of Ness. Fully clouded EDR. Everything will be on there. So I don't depend on an employee sitting inside my castle, which doesn't exist anymore, basically. This is my approach.
Okay. Yoram, talk to me about the cloud.
I'm a fan of the cloud. But it really depends what kind of cloud, and it really depends what your business needs are. There are private clouds, there are public clouds, okay? If you ask me, I'll say that Azure, GCP, AWS are probably doing security better than 95% of the companies. And yes, you should enforce your own security on the cloud, okay? If you're using Okta or the others, if you're using SaaS applications, you should insist on having your own encryption keys. You do add your own layers of the security, but out of the box, the big ones, the public ones, would probably provide better security than 95% of the organizations.
Okay. Noam?
Well, first of all, I have to admit I'm a great fan of the cloud. I tend to agree it solves a lot of the problems that we are facing. But on the other hand, and again, I tend to agree with most of my colleagues here, it creates a different kind of problems. Like always, we need to balance between them. Because of its size, because of the connectivity, because of the complexity, we start to find, or we can see a lot of huge problems. Most of them because of the customers do not understand what he is facing or what he needs, as it was mentioned. Or the guys, the professional guys from the customer side or selling and providing services to the customers are not good enough. And then we start to find chaos that the bad guys, again, can use. And this is a major problem. And another thing, because of what Yoram said, and I tend to agree with you, sir, But some of the customers tend to think that this is a magic, and they just solve all of their problems, and then they move to immigrate to the cloud without solving some of the built-in problems, and then it's a chaos. Then we have a real problem. And like other procedures, you have to do it carefully and with professional beside you.
Right. Tzach?
The train has left the station. Every organization lives in a hybrid cloud today. Everybody has access, has data in the cloud, even if they don't know about it. All you can do is perform discovery, perform digital asset management, and manage the risks. And, for me, something on the cloud is the same as something in my data center, because in critical cases, I might need to get a third party to log in into my data center and support. This is not my employee. We have a shared responsibility for the system. It could be a system in the cloud. We have a shared responsibility. So AWS or Amazon, Microsoft, Google, IBM, whoever has their share, but we have our own share. And it's better for us to know and understand the risk, and I'm managing the risk. In addition to that, if we don't manage, we don't understand it, it doesn't help us, because Microsoft had been hacked, 365 have been used for attacks, AWS had been used in the last year for attacks on our infrastructure. Google infrastructure has been used to attack organizations globally, and even us, and we are seeing attacks every day. I'm facing them with my team. So for me, it's the same. You manage the risk, you understand that you have to use the cloud, you have to mitigate the risks that are different. Cloud is an enabler for the IT in some facets, but again, you have to take into account some aspects that you take naturally inside your own data centers, like business continuity, disaster recovery. And if you rely 100% on the cloud, you might lose your business, and some organizations have already seen it.
Right. Ofer?
The cloud is an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to rebuild the security architecture and the IT architecture of the organization. So moving from kind of legacy architecture into a more modern one. But it also obviously has its challenges with it, because when it's moving to the cloud, in a sense, most of our interfaces with our business applications are becoming web interface. That wasn't obviously the situation about a decade ago. So we have moved from fat application, rich application, executables on our endpoints now to having more and more web applications, meaning that the number one most dominant application that we have in our organization is obviously the browser. So now we used to have hundreds of applications in the organization. Now we have one application that is controlling 80% of our services, and another, let's say, 50 applications that are doing the rest of the 20 applications, which are still have not migrated. That means probably a different focus in the organization of how do we access these services, how do we interact with them, and maybe we need to also think differently about that endpoint which are accessing this web application. And part of kind of our thought process was, if one application is becoming the endpoint for everything, maybe we need to rethink about the permissions there, maybe we need to rethink about the visibility, maybe we need to rethink about the security from that point. So agreeing with everyone here on the opportunities of the cloud, I also want to put a spotlight on the risk and also on the opportunity to use that browser to become the new security endpoint for everything that we do in our organization across the whole workforce.
If I can add, Yaakov, when we are looking on the environment, it seems simple. We have our private cloud, we have our public cloud, and that's it. But in the reality, we have multi-clouds. We have SaaS applications, we have the hyperscalers, we have edge computing, and to manage all of that, it's become very complex. What we are seeing a new management silos. We are seeing new skills. We discuss about the human. We need to manage it. We have new skills that they need to adopt to manage this environment. We are seeing shadow ITs. We are seeing many secure exposures for this environment. And this is something that organizations must have in their programs and in their understanding how to manage it.
Right. Noam, I'd like to start with you, the next thing, which is obviously working from home, working remotely. That's a huge thing that happened in the past 2 years now, almost. How does that affect the whole thing?
Well, I would like to say, to start, I'd love to say we see challenges and opportunities, but I have to admit that in the last at least 8 months now, we're facing mainly the challenges. Mainly the challenges. Because of different reasons, I think that we touched at least some of them right in the last 30 minutes, starting with the bad guys who are taking advantage of us, let's call it the new level and kind of connectivity in one hand. And second, the human resource that cooperate with them and allow them to do very bad things. And again, I think the technology failed or wasn't updated enough. We can see a huge improvement in the last few months, but still, we can see the level of risk, and I prefer to use this term, the level of the threat is always over there, but the level of risk was and still is very, very high. And I can tell you, based on our international projects, this is one of the first gaps that we need to close, to improve the technology, to limit the people who are using the systems, to better educate them. Yes, we're investing a lot. We know that our customers are investing a lot, and we are also. And in educating them and in incident response because of these problems. I think it brought us to a new kind of reality that we all need to use or to face. And the cloud, if I may, is part of the solution. Yes, we have problems. I just touched them, and my colleagues also. But it allows us, and this is one of the main advantages of this environment, as it was said by, I think, Moshe, it allows us to use, in a better way, better tools to limit, at least, the problems.
Mm-hmm. Yoram, this huge trend of working remotely, big risk?
Yeah, it is a risk. It's not our decision. It's a business decision that was actually imposed to us by COVID-19 or the situation. I manage a security and organization with 12,000 employees working remotely, all of them. You do better security on the endpoint. You make very granular access to cloud environments. We have close to 100 applications. You minimize the attack surface as much as possible, and you hope for the best.
Yeah, well, which brings us back to the human factor, Tzach. You're good at that. People are getting used to working from home, you know. What are you going to do now? Fight with them?
Well, that's part of the challenge because we built a new steering committee as COVID-19 started, which was composed of business from all the regions, HR from all the regions, legal, IT, security, and of course application and the development side. Because the challenges when you're working globally and with such environments tend to be not only can you work from home, but how do you get to work when you work in shifts and you want to make sure that if one employee gets sick, he doesn't take off an entire shift and you can't manufacture. But on top of that, we had a huge crisis because we had to purchase hundreds of laptops in a couple of weeks, and there were no laptops in the world. So we had to send employees to standard shops, to wherever we could. We took from scrap all the laptops and rebuilt them. And that creates huge security challenges because these are not standard computer image. You have to deploy security measures. You have to distribute them. We had to fly laptops to locations where you don't have IT on site. So it could be a salesperson receiving a laptop which he doesn't know what to do with it. In addition to that, there are specific challenges. We have offices and a facility in China. You cannot download application like Google Authenticator, Okta, or so on, because it is not allowed. How do you manage the risk there? How do you enable them to work without exposing every asset that you put on the cloud at risk? So again, part of it is working with the employees, explaining to them. Part of it is find the technological solutions. Part of it is actually working together with the entire company and the different teams. And part of it is using external trusted parties.
Moshe, you want to tell me what are the risks in the remote work that you see?
Well, there is a world of risks, right? As we can see, there is a trend lately where adversaries understand that these guys are the weakest link. So they target them and then jumping into the organization and then moving laterally, obviously. So, well, we need, first of all, as my dear colleague said, to make sure the employee understands the risk. See, he sits at home. He doesn't have anyone to phone to and ask what to do, so he needs to be briefed before. No,
according to Guy here, he's not sitting at home.
I'm not saying there are no security controls. There are. But, I will give you an example from my personal life. I married my wife 9 years ago. And when we started, she had no idea what security is. And now she does have a security on her phone, and she comes to me with an SMS she suspects is a phishing attempt. So it works, even with technophobic people. So
it only took 9 years.
He said it only took 9 years.
Yeah, so it took less than that, but yeah, it's a process. I do connect to what you said. It's a process. It's not hit and run. It's not like that. So it's a part of, it's a small block in a big building, right? So there needs to be a security controls, but my approach is kind of different. I don't like to limit people. I like to build the security around the business needs. Yeah, like build the guardrail, it's okay. But let the developer, let the worker, let him work, basically. Don't limit him with what you need. Give him the red lines, but don't block the business.
Well, it's a challenge. Guy, before I want to ask you, later on today, we have a panel about the severe shortage of professionals in the tech industry, okay? So if you're going to be too tough on people who want to work from home, they're going to work elsewhere.
But just a second, we're about to lose here an opportunity for a solution, because I think Moshe explained the solution. So every man and woman in the industry should marry a security expert. That's the best budget
Problem
solution.
solved.
I
think we're about to miss the punchline of that panel.
I understand that you are still single.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And I think that my wife was a security expert even before me, but...
Too much information.
But that's a great reality show. Marry a cybersecurity expert.
Perfect.
Coming soon on this screen. Yes, Guy.
It's not Yafa V'Achnun? I think that
Something like that.
Something like this. I think that working for home basically add one more thing to the equation. We still have all the other problems that we had until the COVID-19 and the transfer to home. And now we have one more thing to think about, which is how do I work in an unsecured and unmonitored environment that I cannot impose most of the security controls on it. So I cannot bring a laptop to each employee because there are no laptops to buy. So I'm telling them, listen, use your own computer. He will tell me, okay, but I will not install your antivirus, so you will be able to spy on me and on the chip that you transferred on the COVID vaccine. And those are the people that you are facing in some cases. So this is a huge, more attack surface that we cannot monitor, protect, or even understand in some cases, and we cannot touch on it. But we still need to be able to give the employee the chance to work. So what I'm suggesting is that we've added one more major thing that we cannot control and we cannot monitor, but we can hope that we can put some controls that will lower the risk. And in some cases we can do it, and in a lot of other cases we cannot do it.
Are there enough companies working on this right now? Itay.
Yeah. So first of all, work from home is here to stay. We just discussed about it before the panel, and each employee in the market who is looking for a new job is looking for a job that he can work from home at least 2 days a week. And we can see that as technology companies, we're supposed to secure and provide to them a secured environment. What does it mean? In Dell Technologies, we are trying to position secure on and secure in for the operating systems and for the hardware. And as all the guys in the panel can say, I believe, they are trying to provide for them a secure environment in home, because for them as a salesperson, as a human resource, or any employee in the company, they need to get the same as they are getting in the office for them. Because they are not a security guys, they are not understanding inner risks, they need to, we can build the awareness for them, but in the end they are not the security guys. And we as a companies supposed to provide them a secured environment and need to understand how to monitor it, how to connect it to our environment and provide them the best secure environment.
Right. Also, big organizations aspire to become global and multinational and travel a lot. Somebody mentioned here working in China or doing something in China. So, for example, Noam, IAI is a huge organization. Does working or is working around the world makes it more vulnerable to attacks?
Well, look, this is cyber. There are no borders. We all have slides, I'm sure of it, that there are no borders, there are no, at least physical borders. Now, today, you don't, even if I'm going to connect my computer to your computer, I'm not sure what track, what lines I'm going to use. So, of course, this international environment creating a huge damage or a huge risk, sorry, not damage, there are a lot of opportunities, but there is a huge risk because, let's admit it, most of the attacks are coming, I'm not sure most, but a large portion of it coming from the outside. Different actors, state level, or just criminals, or just borrowing kids from different places are looking for the weakest point. And if I may, and referring also to the last point, look, I think that this reality created a strategic challenge or even challenges to the organizations and countries because of the different opponents, because of the different risks. And just as an example, today organizations and states starts to have to widen their borders, what they are looking at. They need to look at my computer, to look at computers with Fortnite, and from against risk from the inside, workers as that we are all familiar with, local criminals and international threats in different levels. So I think that this is the reality. We can't change it. It's here to stay, not only the good things like working from home, but also the bad things and the challenges. We can limit them. We can teach our workers, our employees to deal with them. We can, I think that we have to get a better technology that allows us to do it and still balance between the cybersecurity, that is very important, and the business and the operational continuity. Otherwise, we're going to fail.
Okay.
If I can add one point, when we are discussing about this revolution of work from home, it didn't happen in 5 years or something like that. It came in 3 months with the COVID. And many organizations didn't build the strategy how to work with it. And now we are seeing that organizations are starting to adopt and build a real strategy for work from home. And this is something really important for many organizations.
Yeah.
Yaakov, can I inject some optimism in
Yes, please
that,
do, yeah.
So we've been discussing on the risks a lot, but I think there is really a unique opportunity here, because if everything is indeed moving to the cloud and becoming web application, and if people are already kind of understanding on the same device, they're going to do personal things and going to work-related things, and if we understand that this is here to stay, then I think it's a huge opportunity where employees are saying, okay, we understand that few things need to change on the IT and security. We understand that the current technology that was protecting us 2 years ago is going to change. And I want us for a second to imagine a bubble. A bubble for all of the organizational stuff that is monitored, that is controlled, that has different permission for every application, that has monitoring for all of the risky things, and that has also the ability to look after the fact if something did go wrong, and to do it in a situation where the employee does not feel that there is invasion to its privacy, because we are never going to look on anything that is not work-related. I think this is really possible, and obviously that's why at least I embarked on that journey to bring that forward, and technology-wise, it's really possible. It does take time, but it is possible.
Thank you for that. Another remark from anybody before we close?
So you asked about different countries and how do you manage and what are the differences. And so one of the major challenges is when facilities are shut down because of COVID, how do you certify them when you can reopen them? Because we have facilities which have hundreds or thousands of sockets in the wall when you can plug in a computer. And you have many devices. How do you certify a facility? It doesn't have to be in China. It could be India, Japan, France, Spain, Germany. You shut down the facility. You come back after 3 months. How do you know nobody planted anything inside it? Which is an interesting challenge.
An interesting challenge. Anything else? Thank you very much.